I was mid-dive, coffee in hand, when I spotted it, a blinking red eye, spying on my pool. Karen, what the actual heck? HOA installed cameras over my pool, so I set up a giant inflatable wall. Part 1, the blink, the brew, and the breach. It was a lazy Sunday morning, the kind where you believe, just maybe, peace is still possible in this wild, HOA-infested world. The sun was soft, the birds were gossiping, and I was mid-dive into my pool, mug of Colombian roast still in hand, feeling like a suburban Olympian. Bob Marley played on the speaker. Chlorine and fresh-cut grass danced in the breeze. And then I saw it, a tiny, blinking red light, hovering above the hedge line, like a robotic mosquito with an attitude problem, a camera, mounted high, polished black, staring straight down at my pool like it was preparing for surveillance season on National Geographic. I froze mid-paddle. That wasn't some neighbor's gadget. It was official, HOA official, perched just outside my fence, mounted on a steel pole tall enough to peek right into my slice of peace, and just like that, my coffee tasted like betrayal. Part 2, the towel, the straw, and Rule 42. B, still soaked. I wrapped a towel around me like a battle flag, marched into my house, opened the HOA app, and there it was. Community surveillance update. New safety measures implemented. Cameras placed at strategic corners. I live in a cul-de-sac, Karen. There are no strategic corners, no break-ins, unless you count Marie's missing potted plant and Greg's raccoon panic as a crime wave. I knew exactly who was behind it. Karen Donnelly, HOA president, clipboard commander, the woman who once fined me for having unapproved wind chimes. She was sipping something green and smug when I confronted her. Didn't even look up. If this is about the camera, she said, we had 3 incidents last year. 3? I raised an eyebrow. She listed them. One was a sneeze, one was a misplaced flower pot, and the last, Greg, again, and his raccoon saga. But the kicker? She swiveled her laptop around. There's nothing illegal about it. Rule 42B, anything visible from a shared zone is community relevant. My pool, apparently, was now a public landmark. Part 3, the blueprint, the cousin, and the inflatable insanity back home. I dried off, but my rage still dripping. I pulled up the HOA bylaws. Rule 42B was real, but conveniently vague. It gave them power, but also gave me an opening. So I called Leo, my cousin, industrial designer, chaos enabler, builder of Comic-Con foam armor and underwater drones. Leo, I asked, what's the biggest inflatable thing I can put in my backyard? Legally? He didn't ask why. He just said, I'm in. That night we sketched it out on a napkin. A 10-foot tall, 25-foot wide inflatable wall. One side, tropical beach mural. The other, reflective vinyl. It wouldn't block roads, wouldn't be permanent, but it would block that camera like a boss. I filed for a temporary event permit under HOA guidelines. They approved it, probably thinking I was building a gazebo. Oh, they had no idea. Part 4, the wall rises, and Karen melts inflation day. Leo showed up before sunrise with a truckload of vinyl, an industrial air pump, and enough energy drinks to power a spaceship. By noon, my backyard looked like a party supply store exploded. The wall went up fast. Tropical flamingos, cartoon dolphins, pineapples the size of beach balls, garish, glorious, and totally within the rules. From my yard? Paradise. From Karen's camera? Blocked. I took a picture. Posted it to the HOA group chat. Caption: Privacy is a beach. 3 minutes later, Karen showed up like a storm in heels. Tiny dog yapping, eyes on fire. "What is that?" I smiled from my lounger. "Temporary event decor, approved and permitted." She stared, then saw the permit tacked to my fence, signed by her own secretary. She tried to argue, sputtered about aesthetic disruption. I replied, loudly, "Section 12A, 14 days of inflatable freedom." And I swear, her eye twitched. Part 5. The letters, the citations, and the Flamingo uprising. By day 2, my wall was the talk of the block. Kids pointed, neighbors smiled. One lady left a basket of plastic flamingos on my porch. By day 3, the hate mail began. 8 violations, hand-delivered, all signed by Karen. Obstruction of airflow, visual aggression, improper joy levels. Okay, I made that last one up, but it felt accurate. I posted every citation to the neighborhood forum with a simple message. Anyone else getting HOA love letters? Asking for a friend. Sheila, who once got fined for her dog's water bowl, chimed in. Paul, the umbrella guy, added his own horror story. The neighborhood was waking up. Karen had poked the wrong inflatable bear. Part 6. The meeting, the meltdown, and the vote. Then came the emergency HOA meeting. Topic: visual stability and inflatable extremism. I wore a Hawaiian shirt, brought a binder full of receipts, and a USB stick titled Karen Cam. Karen came armed with a binder the size of a suitcase. She launched into a 15-minute tirade about safety and seagull noises, and the moral decay caused by beach decor. Then she dropped the bomb. A new policy. Ban anything over 6 feet tall without board review. That's when I stood up, calmly, and let it rip. This isn't about safety. This is about control. That camera pointed at my pool? Illegal. Those citations, retaliation, and the mailbox footage of you personally delivering fines? Yeah, that's a federal issue. The room went silent. Bill, the board member, leaned forward. Karen, did you deliver those citations yourself? Karen blinked. Someone had to. Bill nodded, then turned to the room. I move we table this policy and review her actions instead. Seconded. Vote passed. Karen turned red, then white, then silent. Part 7. The Fall, the Fiesta, and the Flamingo Legacy. The next week, Karen resigned. Her letter, dramatic, rambled about disorder and inflatable tyranny. But no one cared. Priya became the new HOA president. Her first act? A community pool party. At my house. We called it the Flamingo Fiesta. Music, cupcakes, pool noodles for miles. And as people laughed, floated, and toasted to freedom, a woman from the city zoning office pulled me aside. You know, she said, that inflatable wall? Absurd and brilliant. The wall didn't just block a camera. It sparked a movement. It reminded people that peace isn't passive. Sometimes, it's 10 feet tall, covered in flamingos, and standing firm in your backyard. Part 8. The Courtroom Clash and the Flamingo Rebellion. The day of the HOA's public vote felt electric. People weren't just showing up to complain. They came ready to witness history. I arrived early, wearing a Hawaiian shirt and flip-flops, not out of disrespect, but because I knew it would drive Karen absolutely insane. The clubhouse was packed. Folding chairs scraped on tile. Hushed murmurs buzzed like a storm building in slow motion. Karen stood up front, behind a podium, with her usual binder. This one labeled in bold red, Visual Safety and Community Order. She launched into a full slideshow presentation. Blurry photos of my wall, clips of bouncing flamingos, even a shot of my inflatable palm tree lit up at night, labeled Potential Wind Hazard. She paced like a dictator, clicking through slides like they were war plans. Then came her final move, a dramatic reveal. A letter from a neighborhood safety consultant claiming my wall could obstruct emergency responders and endanger the community. That's when I stood up. I walked slowly to the front, binder in hand, and said loud enough for every phone mic to catch it. Let's stop pretending this is about safety. This is about control, about an HOA president who installed a camera over my private pool, issued fake citations, and now wants to punish me for standing my ground. The room fell silent. Then I handed out copies of everything. The permit, the video of Karen stuffing my mailbox, the timeline of citations, the official city report clearing me. Bill, the older board member, raised his hand slowly. Karen, did you really deliver those citations yourself? She hesitated. Someone had to ensure he got them. That's not how this works, he replied. That's not your job. Karen opened her mouth to argue, but the crowd was already reacting. Laughter, murmurs, heads shaking in disbelief. Priya, the younger board member, leaned forward and said, I move to table this entire vote, indefinitely. Bill nodded. Seconded. The motion passed. No new restrictions, no policy change. Karen stood frozen, binder trembling in her hands, then stormed out. No eye contact, no words, just silence. That night, I found a manila envelope taped to my door, no HOA stamp. Inside was a restraining order request, filed by Karen. She claimed I was harassing her, that my inflatable wall caused her emotional distress, and that I created a threatening environment. I read the paperwork in disbelief, then laughed out loud. She hadn't just lost the war. She was trying to drag me into a new one, in court. But this time, I came armed with everything. The next part will tell you exactly what happened when we faced off in front of a judge. And spoiler alert, flamingos weren't the only things that flew that day. Part 9. The court smackdown and the Flamingo uprising courtroom days are supposed to be stressful, but I showed up to mine, calm, collected, and carrying a folder labeled Karen versus Common Sense. Karen? She walked in wearing all black, like she was starring in a courtroom drama, binder clutched like a holy script, and lips pursed like she'd just tasted injustice. The judge was a woman in her 60s, sharp eyes, zero patience. Karen launched first, describing how the wall loomed over her home, how it obstructed her view, and gave her tiny dog existential anxiety. I nearly choked on my water. Then she brought up the emotional damage. Said I'd mocked her with pineapples and flamingos, and dared to laugh in the neighborhood group chat. The judge raised a brow and turned to me. Do you have a response? Oh, did I ever. I opened my folder like a magician revealing a final trick. Video footage of Karen putting letters in my mailbox, screenshots of her fake citations, the city's approval of my temporary structure, HOA bylaws. Printed, highlighted, annotated, and then I played the clip from the neighborhood meeting, the one where Karen said, someone had to ensure he received them. The courtroom was silent, except for the faint sound of Karen's lawyer audibly gulping. I kept it short. This isn't about safety. It's retaliation because I blocked her camera, legally, with an inflatable wall that's done more for this neighborhood than her newsletter ever has. The judge didn't even hesitate. Request denied, and frankly, this looks like harassment. Karen didn't look at me when she left. She stormed out, again, binder clenched like it betrayed her. I walked out of that courthouse into the sunlight, smiling, relieved, and just a little bit tempted to install a second inflatable wall just for fun. But the real surprise came that night. A knock on my door. No envelope, no threats, just a handwritten note, no signature. Thank you for standing up when the rest of us stayed quiet. The next morning, the camera above my pool? Gone, no warning, no explanation, just vanished. Karen had lost, the wall had won, and somehow the neighborhood had finally started to breathe again. Part 10. The Great Flamingo Festival and HOA Karen's Final Fall. I thought the story ended at the courthouse, but apparently, the inflatable wall had a longer legacy than I expected, because 2 days later, my mailbox was overflowing, but this time, not with threats, not with citations, with invitations. Flamingo Fiesta, hosted by your favorite pool guy. Wyo floaty, no clipboards allowed. Theme, freedom, snacks, and spite. I didn't organize any of it. The neighbors did. Sheila, yes, dog bowl violation Sheila, brought over pink cupcakes topped with gummy flamingos. Bill, from the HOA board, he showed up in a Hawaiian shirt with Bluetooth speakers and a grin that said, "Retirement came early." Someone even brought a miniature bounce house, shaped like a pineapple. It was glorious. The backyard turned into a block party. Max ran in circles around the grill. Kids floated in my pool like it was an all-inclusive resort. And across the street, Karen's blinds were drawn, her little dog pacing, and her front yard as silent as a funeral. At one point, someone shouted, "To the wall that saved us!" Everyone raised their drinks, even Sheila's husband, who I hadn't seen smile since 2019. And just when I thought things couldn't get any better, a reporter showed up, not local, statewide. She'd read the story online, the wall, the citations, the court battle, and she wanted an interview. Right there, in front of the inflatable flamingo army. I looked around. Neighbors laughing. Karen's house sulking in the shadows. And Max, proudly peeing on a lawn flamingo like it was a victory flag. I turned to the camera and said, "They installed a camera to watch me." So I gave them something to look at. Mic. Dropped. That night, the article went viral. Headline: How a Giant Inflatable Wall Sparked an HOA Revolution, Karen's Reign Officially Over. But the inflatable wall, still standing tall, and about to become a permanent exhibit in the Museum of Neighborhood Resistance. Part 11. The Final Deflation, and the Wall That Changed Everything. I stood alone the next morning, coffee in hand, staring at the inflatable wall like it was a retired superhero. It had done its job, shielded my peace, mocked the absurd, and brought a fractured neighborhood back together, with flamingos no less. Max sat beside me, tail swishing in the grass, like he knew what was coming. I placed a hand on the soft vinyl, still warm from the sun, and whispered, "You were ridiculous, but you were perfect." Then I pulled the valve. The sound it made? Somewhere between a sigh and a cheer. The wall slowly folded in on itself, like it knew its mission was complete. Neighbors walked by with bittersweet waves. Sheila sniffled. Even Bill from the HOA muttered, "Kinda gonna miss that thing?" It took an hour to roll it up, another to find a place for it in the shed. But before I stored it away, I did one last thing. I took one of the flamingos, the pinkest, sassiest one, planted it proudly by my mailbox and tied a laminated sign around its neck. Karen Free Zone. And right underneath that, a hand-drawn map, labeling the spot as Museum of Neighborhood Resistance, established, year of the Flamingo. Max barked in approval. I looked around and realized the yard was still mine, the pool still peaceful, the neighbors still waving. And Karen? Her house was now for sale. No fanfare, no goodbye, just a bland little sign and the sound of blinds that never opened again. As the sun began to set, I floated in my pool, drink in one hand, serenity in the other, and thought about everything that wall had stood for: privacy, petty revenge, peace through plastic. But most of all, it reminded me of one simple truth. Sometimes, to win against crazy, you just need a little air, a little defiance, and a giant inflatable middle finger. And with that, Max jumped in. The flamingo bobbed proudly in the breeze, and I finally, relaxed. Epilogue: the flamingo, the freedom, and the quiet that followed. A month passed. The flamingo still stood guard. Its laminated tag faded a bit in the sun, but somehow it looked prouder than ever. People still slowed their cars when driving past. Some to smile. Some to take pictures. One guy even saluted it once like it was a flag of freedom. Karen? Long gone. Her house sold in 3 days. Rumor was, she moved to a gated community with strict decor codes and 0 pools. Fitting. The HOA, now run by Priya and a team of people who actually smiled. They changed the bylaws, removed the camera policy, and held a monthly meeting called Snack and Suggestions. There were flamingo cookies. Of course. Max? He finally stopped barking at the ghost of the camera pole. Now he just naps in the sun, like he's guarding a kingdom that finally knows peace. As for me, I started writing about absurd battles, plastic rebellion, and what happens when you stop letting quiet people get pushed around. One story turned into 10. One inflatable wall turned into a legend. And every once in a while, someone rings my doorbell. A stranger, holding a plant, or a tray of brownies, or a folded lawn chair. They always say the same thing. "Are you the guy with the wall?" I just smile, step aside, and say, "Come on in. We're a Karen-free zone now."